Hi, everyone. We are back at 7:30 Eastern Time to talk about a really important topic. And we're going to just pause for a minute and welcome you all here. And how many of you were here this morning? How
Yeah,
many of you were here this morning?
yeah. I
Yeah,
was.
just let us know. Yeah. Elise and I were here last night. We're here this morning. We are here tonight. So welcome, Instagram. We're happy to see you here too. We hope you join us really soon. We're talking today about your children need one healthy parent. So let me start with by asking two questions. What does it mean to be healthy? Because if we don't define that,
Right.
we might think the wrong thing is being healthy. So if you're going to be one healthy parent, what does that look like? But before we even define healthy, let's talk about why. Why do your children, why do all children, not just your children, why do my children, the world's children need one healthy parent? Why is that important? Because if you don't know why that's important, then it may not motivate you to do that. So, why is it important for children to have one healthy parent? Then we'll go into defining healthy. But what does it mean for your children to have one healthy parent? Welcome, all of you on Instagram. We're so glad you're here. We're talking about parenting, and so many of you are in an awful marriage. And we've talked a lot about that this week. And so we're going to shift our focus to talking about the kiddos because the kiddos are impacted. I was impacted growing up with an unhealthy mom for sure. And
Mm,
so what does a kid need at least from one healthy parent?
mhm,
Why is that important? What do
mhm,
you think? What do you think? Put it in your chat or let us see some of your comments.
mhm. Yeah. I would start off just by saying stabilization. It doesn't take two to stabilize, right?
Mhm.
And really, our call is to raise for the next generation, really and truly for God's glory, right? We are raising children for the kingdom. And so, without one healthy parent, we may just out of the gate not be really serving out our full purpose of why we are procreating and raising the next generation. And so, but the stabilization, to calm, one's emotions, to stabilize so that the child can see the world through healthy eyes, right? Without
Mhm.
anxiety and stress right. And so even one parent can calm a child. One parent can stabilize. If one parent is stable and healthy, then I have a guide, then I have a direction to go in.
Mhm.
So,
When one parent is healthy, I think it makes the unhealthy parent more obvious, right? When both parents are unhealthy,
right.
this is a free for all,
Who
right?
is
And you might be unhealthy in different ways.
right,
Like he
right,
might be the narcissist and you might be the
right,
codependent, but you're both very unhealthy. But one
right,
looks like the noble,
right,
sacrificial Christian, and the other person looks, it depends on which is more covert. But
right,
one healthy parent helps a child see the difference between
right.
healthy and unhealthy.
Yeah, yeah. And the amount of, if both parents are unhealthy, the amount of confusion that would
Mhm,
cause versus one
mhm,
saying, oh, I see what calm looks like. I see what healthy functioning looks like.
mhm.
I see what it looks like to maintain my emotional well being, to actually even steward myself well. Like,
To stick
we were
up for myself.
speak
Mhm,
up for myself, right? And
mhm,
so, as we were talking just a little bit earlier, of really being able to say, "Hey, mom's not happy right now." That night just had a little spat, and mom's a little bit sad, right? Without, there being a big show around. It doesn't mean that, our emotions never rise above, the median or something, but that stabilization to say we can have emotions in an emotional range and still be okay
mhm,
versus if I get angry, everyone's going to know it and everyone's going to run for their life, right?
mhm.
And shudder, right? So,
So one of the reasons why our kids need one healthy parent is safety. All right. So a child cannot grow or thrive when they're unsafe, just like you can't. All right. But a child, at least you know what's going on. You've got a cognitive ability to kind of look at what's going on, like he's acting like a nutcase or whatever. He's scaring all of us.
right,
But when your child is a baby or little, they don't have the ability to process what's going on. All they know is their nervous system is high alert. They're anxious. And when they're anxious and high alert and they have no soothing because he's throwing a fit and you're dysregulated by him throwing a fit. So he's not okay and you're not okay.
Right.
And now the kid isn't okay.
Mhm.
And that child, when they're dysregulated in their nervous system, you know what happens when a baby can't settle? When a baby can't settle because they're dysregulated, whether it's because of their own dysregulation or because the environment is scary or toxic or turmoil, full of turmoil, what do? You hold the baby and you start co-regulating that baby because you are calm and you can rock that baby and you can soothe that baby. But if you can't do it because you're completely dysregulated or shut down, then that baby is going to suffer and they're not going to be able to have a safe space to grow and to thrive. And so even from infancy, you think you can hide the stuff from an infant? They pick up the energy in the room.
Right.
And they can pick up whether that energy is loving and safe or whether it's scary and harsh. They can pick that up. They might not put words to it. They might not be able to put words to it, but they feel it.
Right.
And that impacts their nervous system.
Right. And just like you just said that, Leslie, I remember years ago with some level of anxiety, around parenting or something, a wise counselor said to me, she said, your number one job is to get them through the day safely. And it wasn't just their physical safety, just what you're saying. And so, I really have one job, right? Their emotional safety, their physical safety, their, well-being, that I put them to bed safely at night. And exactly what you're saying, for all these reasons, but we can kind of gather it all up, and it's about their safety, right? And so if they're not safe, but we can be the one parent that provides that safety, whether we're
and I think this is really hard for moms because when your marriage is in trouble, when he's not okay, he's cheating, he's lying, maybe he's not violent, but let's just say he's watching porn. And in our workshop, many of you have signed up for the workshop. I was just telling Elise, we have over 4,000, 5,000 women signed up now for the workshop. So we have a lot of signups. I don't know how many are going to actually show up, but my point is this is resonating. When he's not okay, I'm not okay. What do I do? All right. You need to learn what to do because your kiddos are counting on one healthy parent. And if he's not changing and you're so focused on changing him so that you can be okay, then you're not changing either because he's not regulated. You're not regulated. He's not okay. You're not okay. And now your kiddos are not going to be okay. And so it's imperative, ladies, for your children's well-being that you learn that putting your marriage as your number one priority is idolatry. God is your number one priority. God is your number one priority. And so many women become women who are man-centered, marriage-centered. He must change or I will die. He must love me or I will die. And you're so focused on getting him to change and getting him to be the man you want him to be and getting him to love you and getting him to be honest and getting him to stop watching porn or whatever that you don't have any energy left to parent the littles that you've got brought into this world. And this is a disservice to them. And I'm not saying forsake your marriage, but you can't fix him. But you can fix you so that you can help the next generation. And I have seen so many women, and you have too, Elise, who have sacrificed their well-being in order to try to save their marriage. And it's not only ruined their marriage, it's ruined their kids.
Right. I think one of the things is we stay locked in the if only world. If only he would, then we'd be okay. If only, then everything would be okay. If only. Instead of stepping out like, this is what it is. Now, let me empower myself to say, I'm going to accept this, not just acknowledge that he does porn or not just acknowledge that he drinks too much or not just acknowledge that the finances aren't good. I'm going to accept that that's what it is. How do I care for myself, steward myself well, so that I can be the healthy parent for my children? Right?
And what is a healthy parent? So let's talk about that because someone on Instagram was saying, well, my husband's not watching porn. It's verbal abuse. And the verbal abuse is coming to you. It's coming to your children. Maybe it's not coming to your children. It's just coming to you. And when you do one of two things, these are the mistakes that women make when they're being abused, whether it's covertly and the kids never see it or the kids do see it. Is you do one of two things that are both unhealthy. One is that you fight back. That's a trauma response, fight, flight, freeze or fawn. So
Mhm.
the one mistake we see is that you fight back and you repay evil for evil. So he's going to verbally abuse you. You're going to batter and give it right back. And so your kids are seeing two husband and wife who are biting and devouring one another.
Mm.
And they're learning this is normal. This is how people treat each other. And is that what you want to teach your kids?
Right. Right.
Or they see one person getting battered and another person fawning. What do I need to do? What do I need to do? How can I make you happy? Let me fix this. Let me submit. Let me do whatever I need to do in order to make you okay. And they see you fawning. And that's not healthy for them to see. It's not healthy for you to do. Or they may see you pretending. Like you did, especially if the kids didn't see it. So let's say that you've been dysregulated. Your husband has called you horrible names, not in front of the kids, or maybe he's just said, you're such a loser. And he just says it under his breath. And the kids don't hear it. So they think dad's great.
Right.
But you're totally undone. Right. And so you're crying and your kiddo comes up to you and says, Mommy, what's wrong? And you say, oh, nothing. I just had something in my eye. My contacts are bothering me. And you lie and you pretend. And what happens to that kind of mom is when you have a pattern of teaching your child that everything is great, nothing's wrong, and they sense something's wrong, they're going to make up a story about what's wrong. Either mom's depressed or she's nuts or mom doesn't tell the truth, or maybe they'll believe you. And then when you finally can't do it anymore and you're spent, and maybe they're 18 or 19 or 25 and you say, hey, I can't do this anymore. My body is giving out. They're going to say, Mom, you're ruining our family.
Right.
You're just making all this up now. You were fine all these years and you weren't fine, but you lied and pretended that you were fine.
Right. Yeah. Erin said, I wish I had known this years ago. It's going to be so much more challenging for my 2 teen sons. Erin, I would encourage you and say, certainly if you knew it earlier, you'd be doing differently, along the way. But I don't want that to discourage you. Really, you can begin today with what you do know. And your boys will benefit from you starting today. I think that thought can kind of sink us and tank us. It's like, well, there's no hope now. And that's absolutely not true. It may be a limiting belief for you. Instead of saying, thanks be to God, I found out this information today. Yeah, I can make a difference today. I can start today.
And I think one of the things that our children love, that it's an element of healthiness. So what is healthy? We didn't define that. What is healthy? And I think healthy is being honest with yourself, honest with your kiddos. Now, it doesn't mean telling everything about everything. It's age appropriate. So if your child at 3 years old says, Mommy, how are babies made? I don't think you pull out the book and show them all the pictures yet. Right? But you don't say, oh, babies are made by God and they come in on a stork and they leave them at the front door in a little basket. You don't lie about it. Right? You don't make up a story. You say, oh, mommies and daddies make babies and it comes in mommy's tummy. And then it comes out and we have a baby at 2 or 3. And at 5 or 6, you might say something a little bit more. And at 9 or 10, you might be more detailed. And at 13 or 14 or 15, you might tell them the whole story. And the same is true. Why are you crying, Mommy? Well, you're not going to tell a 5-year-old, Daddy said these horrible things to me, right? But you might say, Mommy and Daddies have fights sometimes. And when they do, it makes me feel sad, right? So that you're helpfully teaching your child that relationships impact us. And sometimes we feel sad and it's okay. We can have our sad feelings and we can deal with it. Or sometimes I feel angry and say things that I shouldn't have said when you don't obey me. And I'm really sorry. And so being honest. So if you've been an unhealthy mom, codependent or reactive, or you've been medicating yourself with wine and your kids see it, they see that you're not coping well. Maybe just a little confession can be helpful. Not spilling the whole beans about daddy or spilling the whole beans about you, but just saying, hey, kids, I've realized that I have not been handling my side of the street. I've not been okay with things that have been going on, and I haven't handled that really well. And I've got to learn how to do that. I've got to learn how to do that so I'm healthy, because I want to be a healthy mom for you. And you don't have to say, even if our marriage doesn't make it, but that's exactly what you're saying. Right?
Yeah. So, Yadidra says, I'm so guilty of fighting back in my quest to show my kids to stand up for themselves and defend themselves. I'm showing them to see your spouse as the enemy. For the most part, I walk away and don't engage until we're able to speak to each other with respect. But there are times when I give into my flesh, my anger, trauma response from years of being bullied when I was a child. In those moments, and I apologize to our kids and take accountability for my actions. You know, Adira, I'm so glad that you would say that. I mean, certainly we're all human and we are going to, we have some limitations and there are times, no doubt, when we all say, gosh, I blew it. It got the better of me. But my hope is that you always see that as informative for you. It's like, what was going on that night that I couldn't hold it anymore? Maybe I need to get a little more honest with myself and a little
Mhm.
self-care along the way so that I can continue to hold it and not shame myself though when we lose it, because I think what you did was a beautiful thing to say, hey, you know, I lost it and I don't want to lose it. And so therefore, and it's not healthy for us to lose it. And so, but when we do, how do we make it right? And I
And it's
love
healthy though when we lose it to own it, right?
totally.
So even if, let's just be gross, even if I wet my pants in front of my kids,
Yeah.
right? Because I didn't have the capacity to hold my urine any longer, or a 4 or 5-year-old wets their pants, or they throw up in public and it's so embarrassing, right? So
Mhm.
embarrassing. It's better to say, wow, I need to notice sooner that I'm going to throw up, or I need to take
Right.
care of me when I
Right.
notice that I'm getting at
Right.
capacity to hold my urine or my vomit or whatever else is about to explode out of your mouth or your rear end.
Right.
You want to be able to be mature about that and teach your children how to be mature about that. It's not that it doesn't happen. We just don't want to have it happen in
Right.
ways that we embarrass ourselves or shame ourselves. And so this is where our humanness, we
Right.
are not God. We don't have
Right.
unlimited capacity to take someone's foul words at us, or you know
Mhm.
emotional abuse toward us. And so understand, part of you learning to be okay is saying, what do I need to do to take care of me
Mhm.
in this moment? I
Mhm.
need to go to the bathroom. I need
Right.
to calm down. I
Right.
need to learn to get some help to think clearly, because this is surely getting the best of me, and that's not good for me,
Mhm.
even if
Yeah.
he doesn't change.
Leslie, and you used a similar example to this. I've heard you share this, and it's really good. One of the things that we were all potty trained. I mean, we had to be taught. When you feel that sensation, you can take care of yourself, and so we wouldn't even dream of it now. I mean, I think if we were, in line to, shake the president's hand, and then, our tummy was about to explode, we wouldn't, pee or poop on ourselves in any way. We would get out of line. We would take care of ourselves. But along the way, we've not really, on some level, we certainly are emotionally regulated, in crowds and with people and all that. But we don't really kind of tune up and turn the volume up and like, hey, I'm starting to get there, right? I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. Just like we feel it in our body and our tummy, we need to begin to be tuned up to where we can say, I need to go take care of myself. And, when we talk about, how we take care of ourselves, bathroom habits, sometimes we tell ourselves to go and sometimes our body tells ourselves to go. And so sometimes we may need to say, you know what? I know myself in the past, like, especially as we get older, like, I know if we're going to be gone all day, I need to go now. Right. And so I tell my body, I need to go now. Right. And so sometimes if we're like, hey, it's been building, and I know come nighttime, I'm not going to have as much wherewithal to contain myself. So how do I need to take care of myself now so I don't get there?
Yeah.
Or when I can begin to feel it in my chest or my arms or my belly or wherever it is that you feel it emotionally, a lot of times in my head, I'm about to explode. How do I take care of myself? Just in the same way, can we begin to really think about and concentrate on taking care of our emotional well being? I can feel it. I know I'm getting hot under the collar. How do I take care of myself now to the best of my ability?
And if we can't do that and we don't know how to do that, how can we possibly teach our children to do that? So when a
Right.
2-year-old is throwing a fit, right, and they're flailing on the floor, or my son, when he was 2, he was flailing on the floor in an elevator, in a public elevator in a mall. because his ice cream cone, he was mad and he flipped his ice cream cone and the ice cream cone ended up on me. And then he was embarrassed about that. So he flat out laid on the floor in the elevator throwing a fit. Obviously, at 2 years old, he doesn't know how to regulate his emotions. But if his mother doesn't know how to regulate her emotions and his father doesn't know how to regulate his emotions, we can't possibly help him learn to regulate his, right? And so part of becoming healthy is learning to regulate your bodily functions, to know when you have to go to the bathroom and go, and know when you're about to explode and take care of you. And the same thing is true of your internal world. So
Right.
just like all of you know, we don't have unlimited capacity to hold our urine. We
Right.
have very little capacity to hold our vomit,
Right.
and very little capacity if it's coming out the other end. So you know the timing of things, you know
Right.
that by now. You
Right.
don't put yourself in a situation where you're going to be embarrassed. In the same way emotionally, when you notice you're getting hot, you notice that you're getting depressed. There was a woman on our Facebook Live this morning who was very, very depressed. But again, how do I take care of me? And it might be I need to go get some help. I need to go to the doctor. I need some therapy. That just like if you noticed that you were having an appendicitis, you would go to the emergency room. This is good self-care. So healthy doesn't mean you never need help, that you never say, ooh, I'm about to explode.
Right.
Healthy is you're aware you're about to explode.
Right.
And healthy is also, because we're all sinners.
Right.
Healthy is also if you did explode and you vomited verbally over someone. Right. And this is when we talk about how do I know he's really changing? Because we're all sinful, but there's healthy sin and there's unhealthy sin. And sin is sin. And if I explode over my kid or my husband because I'm angry, am I taking responsibility for that? I need to learn to stop. Or am I blaming the other person? It's your fault. Right. You triggered me. If only you would have listened to me, I wouldn't have treated you this way. If only you would have obeyed me. If only you wouldn't have said that, I wouldn't. So now it's their fault that I'm not controlling myself. That's not healthy. But if that's what our children are seeing, the blame shifting, the blame game, right, that you're responsible for my actions and I'm responsible for your actions, then they're not going to take any responsibility. And so now we have a next generation, right, where the Bible says the sins of the fathers and the mothers are passed on to the next generation. We might say with our words to kids about, hey, you shouldn't hit your sister, or you shouldn't lose control of yourself. But if they see us losing control of ourselves, right, or not being honest with ourselves, they know we made a mistake, we messed up, and yet we're blaming someone else. We're not, it's your fault I lost my temper, instead of saying, I lost my temper and I am so sorry. Right. I'm going to work on that.
Right. Yeah. I'm so glad she was honest about that. It really brought out a lot of conversation, because I don't think anyone here has, not been there.
Well, I just want to share a story. So I was an angry mom. My mother was a very angry mom. My mom was an abusive mom. I had one abusive incident with my son, and I've shared that story in my book, and I'll share it here, where I yanked him up in a fit of anger and I dislocated his elbow from his socket. It's called nursemaid's elbow. Took him to the emergency room, but I didn't lie about it. I told the doctor what I did. I yanked him up. I was so mad. And, the doctor showed me he had a weakness there. It wasn't an abusive legally thing, but I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm becoming my mother. Becoming my mother. I was unhealthy. I was a licensed therapist. I was unhealthy. All right. And so I had to do my work. Okay, what do I need to do to calm down? What do I need to do to get healthy? Owning, hey kids, mommy isn't good with holding her temper. If you ever feel scared around me, you just tell me, mommy, I'm scared, and I will take a time out. I'm going to be accountable to my children for working on this problem. And so they would say, Mom, you're scaring me. Okay, that would be my warning bell. What would happen in a marriage if your husband gave you permission to say, you're scaring me right now? Wouldn't that encourage you that he's really wanting to work on his problem? Right. But what if he doesn't work on his problem? How are you taking care of yours? Your children need to see you own your problem. You take care of your problem. That's healthy. It's not, oh, I'm so healthy, I have no problems. It's, I'm aware of my problem and I'm going to own it and work on it and repent of it. And with God's help, change it. Your children need to see that in your life.
Right. Now we're talking about a healthy parent.
Yeah. Not a perfect parent.
Not a perfect parent, but a healthy parent, right? And that's also, I'm glad that you said that, Leslie, and you've talked about this before. It's like they really do need to see our imperfections, right? And we're not talking about abuse or, harm, but they need to see that we are a limited human being. and that we do make mistakes, and that we do get frustrated, and we do, right? And so that we can understand, and they know that we understand, right? And bringing them into that healthy place.
Yeah, so we want to move to questions a little earlier than we've been doing that, but we want to talk about a workshop that we're doing really quickly. So I'm going to end this banner if I can figure out how to do that, and I'm going to put this banner below here. It says, "When I'm not okay, when you're not okay." So we're talking about that. So if you want to be a healthy parent, you have to learn how to be okay when he's not okay. How do you learn to do that? Because he's dysregulating the whole family, right? His temper outbursts, or his drinking too much, or his cheating, or his whatever he might be doing, or whoever else is in your life. It might be another child who's dysregulating the whole family. And so how do you learn to be okay when someone else isn't okay? Because the Bible tells us that people do influence us and impact us. And so it's very typical that when someone's not okay, we're not going to be okay. That's normal. We're not going to just be, "Oh, I'm fine because you're yelling at me." But the question is, what we tend to do as women is when someone else isn't okay, we try to fix their problem in order for us to be okay. Like, "You need to stop yelling." Well, that's great if they stop yelling. But what if they don't? Right? Then how do you learn to be okay? How do you manage that for yourself? And so I'm going to be doing a free training on Thursday, and we want you to be a part of that. If you're here, you're interested in this stuff. If you're here. And so we're going to spend a whole hour. I'm going to spend a whole hour teaching a very specific way that you can learn to be okay, and why you get so confused by this biblically. Because often we're making the heroic sacrifice of sacrificial lambs for their okayness, when in fact they're never being okay, because they're really not healing. We're just soothing the beast for the moment.
Right.
But they're really not okay.
Right.
So we kind of fool ourselves in thinking, "Oh, see, I calmed him down and now he's okay. So now I can be okay," until the next time, nothing really changes. And so we want to help you see what's going on, and biblically, how do you address this so that you can be the healthy parent your kid needs, even if your marriage doesn't make it. Your kid still needs one healthy parent, even if their parents aren't together. And so it's really important, if this is you or someone you know, that you sign up for this workshop, because we take it off of Instagram, we take it off of Facebook, and we put it on a webinar jam site so that we can just be private. You're not having to worry about somebody seeing this in your feed. And it's a private 1 hour free workshop. You'll get a workbook with it. And then one of my coaches will be with us in the morning. We'll do it at this time, noon Eastern time, and 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, twice live. And one of my coaches will be present with me each time, so that afterwards we can answer questions. And we usually have an hour for the workshop and an hour to an hour and a half of questions. We give a lot of time for questions. And so if you want to come, you have to sign up. Go to www.leslievernick.com/join webinar, all one word. And you will get an email link to participate in the workshop on Thursday, on the webinar on Thursday. And you have to get that link, and we have to get your email so that you go to the other site and not on social media. So we hope that you sign up. We would love to have you there. And one more thing before we move into Q&A. The reason we want you live, I don't know if you notice this or not, but when you come to Instagram Live and you come to Facebook Live and YouTube Live, and you hear the other people speaking in the chat, in the feed, you can't really interact with them personally so much, but you're encouraged by their ideas, or you're saying, "Wow, I'm not alone. Other people lose their temper with their kids too. Other people are handling well. I'm not so crazy." And it really helps you know that. It helps you feel like, okay, I'm kind of normal. I may not be healthy, but I'm kind of normal, unhealthy. I don't feel so alone.
Right.
And that's important for you to know, because we tend to isolate ourselves from this stuff. We don't have conversations about what's really going wrong inside of us or in our homes. And so we really want to have you have an opportunity to chat with our coaches, chat with other people who might be feeling like you do, and have a time to ask your questions in more detail without worrying about it being on social media. So if you attend, that's what you get. You get the workshop, you get the chat, you get the Q&A time. If you don't attend live, you will get the workshop that's recorded, but you won't get the chat and you won't get the Q&A time, because we want to keep that as safe as possible for those who show up live.
Will they get the workbook?
They'll get the workbook, yes,
Okay.
but you won't get the actual chat that was live, or the Q&A time that was live, because we want people to feel really safe as possible, to share what they want to share without worrying that it's going out to somebody who signed up for the workshop that they don't know, and not their information, their name is not going to be out there, but even the chat feature, they might see somebody's chat that they recognize. And so we just want to make sure that you're as safe as possible, as much as we can make it that way. All right. And so please sign up. We would love to have you be a part this Thursday, August 15th, 7:30 Eastern time PM and noon Eastern time, so you can be a part of this workshop. All right.
Yeah. There's several girls in the chat that are pretty excited about it. They've signed up for the workshop. And so welcome. We're glad you're going to be a part of it. So
yeah, if you've been to my workshops before, you know they're chock full of good information.
Good
Information.
So yeah, for sure.
Not just, we're going to give you some real meat for you to ponder and work through so that you can know what you need to do. And it will be really helpful for you. But we want to just take this little topic now. Your kids need one healthy parent. And we want to go to Q&A. I think we've told you why it's important. We've told you how some things you can do at different levels of what you need to do. Healthy is not perfect. Healthy is honest with your limitations and your confessions.
Yeah. And so, we'd love to hear questions. Or both of us, I'll take a look at kind of our...
Can you speak to me how to help little ones navigate having a healthy parent and a destructive one? They see the difference, but they're under age 10 and can't make sense of it.
Okay, let me get to that as well. Well, I think, as Leslie's been saying this, I think that it's, age appropriate. And the maturity level of your 10-year-old, right? Is that what she said? They're 10?
They're under 10. Yeah.
They're under 10, right? And so, and that's the beauty of parenting, is that, your firstborn may be more mature or less mature than your, lastborn. And so, the maturity level of them, what they can handle and what they say. And so, but I think as Leslie really said earlier, I think it's speaking honestly, but age appropriately, right? And we don't have to throw daddy under the bus, but we don't have to be dishonest about daddy either. Or we don't have to be dishonest about ourselves. Like mommy didn't respond well in that moment at all. And mommy's sorry. And so mommy wants to show you really what it looks like to do it better.
And sometimes you can't lie to your kids, but you don't want to exaggerate either. So let's just give a couple of scenarios. Let's say that daddy's drunk. All right. And it might be that he wants to drive in the car. And you might say, hey, when people drink too much, sometimes they don't have the best judgment, but we're not allowed to drive with people who drink. And so mommy's going to call an Uber. That might be what you have to say, because they can see he's stumbling. So what you're not going to say is, oh, daddy doesn't feel good. Now, if daddy is silent and he says, hey, you should drive, then leave it alone, because now you drive and you don't have to create safety. But if he's insisting on driving and you already know he's intoxicated, then you're going to tell your kids, hey, we can't go home with daddy. We're not allowed to drive when someone's been drinking. And so we're going to protect ourselves and call an Uber. You might not quite say it that way, but we're going to call an Uber. We're going to call grandma. We're going to call our neighbor and have them pick us up. And daddy's going to drive home by himself because he wants to drive. And I don't want us to be in the car when he's drank alcohol. And if they're used to him drinking alcohol at home and all those kind of things, please don't lie to your kids. Oh, daddy's just not feeling well. Daddy's sick. Daddy just fell down because he tripped. No, please don't lie to your kids. I'm not saying you have to say your dad's a roaring drunk and he's a jerk, but you have to say they notice what's going on. And so you want to be as clarifying in their age appropriate level that, yes, you see what you see, so that you're not teaching them, you're not gaslighting them. You're not teaching them to deny their own observations of things. Right? They're observing what you're observing. And so you're confirming, yes, daddy drank a little too much tonight. And because of that, we're going to have to call grandma to bring us home. Right? And if daddy doesn't like that, then next time you can say, hey, if that's what you want to do, if you want to drink too much, I'm not going to lie to the kids. So how would you like to handle it? I'm not going to lie to the kids. If you're drinking so much that it's obvious to our children, I will not lie to them about your behavior. Right. And this is how you can be okay. Even when he's not okay. You have to have your boundaries and speak up for that. If daddy is mean in front of everyone, you're not going to say, oh, daddy had a bad day, unless he's never done it before and this is the first time. Then maybe he had a bad day.
Or a one-off, right.
But if this is daddy's pattern, Daddy doesn't know how to control his temper. When he gets really angry, he says some really hard things. I'm so sorry. He said that to you,
Right.
right? He
That's
shouldn't
not
have said that.
okay.
It's not okay. I can't control Daddy, but I'm really sorry he said that to you.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the kind of things you can say to kids that around that age, that
Mm-hmm.
you're going to own what's happening. You're going to be honest about reality. You're not going to gaslight your children.
Right.
And if he's harmed you and they don't see it and they don't know about it, you're not going to say, by the way, your daddy cheated on me. I just need you to know. You're not going to say that, right? But you might say, if they catch you crying, Daddy and I are having some marriage problems and it's hard right now. And that's all you're going to say. But later, if they found out more details, they're not going to remember, oh, mommy told us that before. I'm not surprised.
Right.
So you're not going to use your children as your confidants. You're not going to try to alienate your children from their dad. If he's a good dad, let him be a good dad, even if he's a lousy husband.
Right.
But you are going to let your kids see what they see. And if they see ugly, you're not going to lie about it.
Okay, here's another one for us. Are there specific questions I can ask my therapist or things I can ask her to help me to ensure I maintain emotional regulation while at home around my husband? Are there specific questions? Part of me was like, well, I can ask my therapist or things I can ask her to help me to ensure.
So I would phrase this a little different. So the way I think you're phrasing is throwing a lease off. I think you're right. You're right on to something. So if you notice that there's certain buttons that my husband pushes that activate me, right? And then I tend to show up in a way that I'm not proud of. What we tend to often think of is stop pushing my buttons, right? He needs to change in order for me to be okay. But the truth is, he's purposely pushing your buttons in order to activate your triggers, right? And so, because if someone pushes your buttons and you say, please don't do that, a normal person would stop doing that.
Right.
But if someone doesn't do that and they push your buttons in order to activate you, so you need to say to your therapist, hey, I need some deactivation tools so that when my buttons are pushed, I can calm myself down. Right? It's not about making sure everybody stays away from pushing my buttons, because that's not going to work in real life. It's how do I recognize my buttons are pushed, and when I've tried to ask them not to do that, they actually push them harder. And that makes me look like the crazy one, right? Because they've activated me and now I'm losing my temper, or I'm bawling, or I'm shouting, or I'm cursing, whatever I'm doing that's getting activated. What do I need to do to take care of me when I see that happening? What are the tools I need? So here's one tool. I'm just going to give you this tool. It's easy to use. The Navy SEALs use this when they get activated. So if the Navy SEALs use it in order to calm themselves down, it's good enough for you to use too. It's very simple. It's something you have to practice. If those of you who learned Lamaze and you didn't practice it, it wasn't useful to you. When the push came to the shove and your muscles all tensed up, you didn't know how to do it because you didn't practice it. So this is a breathing technique. God has given us our breath to both energize us and calm us down. I learned a breathing technique to put myself to sleep, and it is so effective. I do it every night, and I go right to sleep after I do it. It's amazing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'll share it with later. So our breath can be used. We don't have to think about breathing most of the time. But if we're activated, we want to do a box breath. And it's just like this, a box. Breathe in, inhale for 4 counts. Hold it for 4 counts. Exhale for 4 counts. Hold it for 4 counts. You're just going to keep doing that over and over again. So 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. In, hold, out, hold. In, hold, out, hold. And you can do it for 4 counts. You can do it for 5 counts, whatever your lung capacity is. Practice it. And every time you start to get a little bit triggered, a little bit anxious, a little bit scared, a little bit stressed, start breathing. All right. And you will notice that immediately you will be able to regulate your body so that you don't flip out. Yeah.
The beauty of this question is that she's wanting to do this. She desires emotional regulation. And when I was reading it, I was just, I don't know, even my own heart just kind of like, I can remember back when my children were small, and I wasn't know that I was the calmest mom either. And I remember I had a great desire that I wanted to be a really calm mom. I didn't I don't think I had wild parents, but they weren't always so calm. And I remember when they weren't, I was pretty nervous about it. And I didn't want to pass that on. And I realized already, I wasn't divorced, but my husband traveled all the time. So I was kind of single parenting it all the time. And sometimes I was just kind of exhausted. That was pretty hard to really be doing that on my own. And I just remember watching someone else one time that had 4 boys, and how she really maintained her emotional regulation so well. I don't know that we used those words back then, but I just remember being so attracted to that. And I thought, that's what I want. That's who I want to be. That's what I want it to look like. How do I get there? And we don't want to, what I call dry drunk it, like just, willpower it through. I think you're asking the right questions and telling your therapist the desires of your heart. I want to regulate. I want to be calm. I want to be present. I don't want to be scary with my children, and so my heart's desire. So it's we're going to teach you some tools up here, but what I hear is your heart. And I think that that's one of the, just kind of primary things, that when it becomes part of your belief system, this isn't healthy for my children, for me to lose my cool, and so I want them to feel safe. Right. And so when it moves from here to here, but we still need some tools sometimes, like, well, that's great, but what do we need to do? And Leslie just gave you a great first.
And I think you can even say that with your kid. Mommy's losing her cool and I don't want to do that. Mommy needs a timeout. Right? Mommy's going to go to her bedroom for 5 minutes.
Right.
And I need you to sit on the couch and you to sit on the chair and watch TV while mommy goes and takes a timeout. Your kids will love that. Mommy needs a timeout too. And you're teaching them healthy skills of self-regulation. I'm noticing that I'm not doing well. And one of my little nephews, I think my niece's son, so I don't know what we call him. He's my little nephew. He was so cute because he hit his little cousin and he said, I think I need a timeout. But that's self-awareness, like a little late.
Right.
A little late, but that's part of teaching your children to be healthy. Like, wow, I let myself hit my cousin. I love my cousin. Oh, I need a timeout to figure out why I did that and not do that again. And that was beautiful. And so I think teaching our children to notice when you're about to lose it, just like you teach your children, do you have to go to the bathroom? No. And then they pee their pants. All right. Now, when you get that way and you're starting to wiggle, you need to head to the bathroom. When you start to feel those feelings inside, you need to take a time out and go calm yourself down. This is how you can calm yourself down. Let's breathe, calm down, take a calming breath. And we see moms in the malls do that all the time these days because it does work. And part of our job is to show, not tell. We can tell our kids not to smoke, but if we're smoking, we're showing them smoking's fine. We can tell our kids not to be mean to each other, but if we're being mean to each other, they see it, right? And we can tell people to follow God, but if we're not following God, they see what's important to us.
Right.
And so we have to show them, and that's why it's so important for your kids to have one healthy parent that they can see.
Right. One of the things too, I don't want to belabor this question too long, but this is a part of our own training versus trying. Like, I'm just trying to be better. We're all trying all the time, but sometimes we have to train. And your question was a really, really good one, an appropriate one. How do I train myself? Just to, I've got to train myself to pause and notice that I'm getting, kind of hot under the collar. Let me stop and take that breath and calm my nervous system down, because our nervous system is waiting for it. They would love to calm down and not have to be in a fight and flight mode. All righty. Let's talk about the next one.
Okay.
All right. Somehow hold on, let me get rid of I don't know how to get rid of that. Thank you. Do you have it right there with you, Leslie?
Yeah. How do you manage mental illness and draw a line between accepting your spouse and not allowing your children to be verbally and emotionally abused? Should I do therapy with them? Divorce is not an option, but temporary separation is. My spouse has bipolar disorder and can be critical and hurtful with his words. So I have a personal experience with that. Both personally, my mother had bipolar disorder and she wasn't careful with her words and she was very abusive. And then I had a client who had bipolar disorder, and when she would get feedback from her husband because she didn't want to hurt her kids with her words, he would say, you need to call your doctor. You're getting into one of those places where you're not going to handle yourself well. And because you told me you don't want to hurt the kids, you need to go do what you need to do to take care of you. I'll take over from here. And she was willing to do that because she trusted that her husband had her back. And she didn't want to harm her kids with her words when she wasn't in her right space of, mind. Because when you're in a manic place, especially, you're not thinking clearly. All right. And so you're doing things that are really opposed to your values and your desires. She also had a doctor. She also took her medication. She also complied with the treatment plan. So I think there's a whole lot to do with mental illness that also has to do with character. So someone might have a disease, even diabetes, and they don't take their medication. They don't check their blood levels. They, get low blood sugar and then get really cranky. They're overeating, they're overweight, and they expect you to just give them a pass because they have diabetes. And yet they're not taking care of themselves in the way they need to in order to manage their health in a healthy way. And the same thing with mental health issues. And so I don't know what the combination of those is, but if your husband is not doing his work to manage his temper, I think there's a come to Jesus moment of saying, hey, look, I am sympathetic to an illness that you didn't cause and it's not your fault. You have a bipolar disease, but you're not taking care of that. You're not going to the doctor. You're not taking your medication. You're self-medicating with alcohol. And that's having an impact on us. And I am not okay with that. So I think that's one conversation that you need to have with your husband. But the other conversation with your kids is, hey, daddy has an illness. And when he gets in a certain place, he doesn't use good words and he doesn't think properly. And if we say, go to your room and close the door, I mean it, because I don't want you to get harmed by him. Or we're going to go to grandma's for the weekend until you call your doctor. Those are boundaries that when you are unwilling to manage yourself and your illness, we are going to take measures to be safe and protect our children and myself.
Amen. Yeah.
Just like if your husband said, I've got COVID. Well, now we wouldn't do it right now, but back 2 years ago, if he said, oh my gosh, I have COVID, what would you do to protect yourself and your children? You could have all the compassion in the world that he has COVID, but you're going to make your kids go to their room, or you're going to make him go to a room, and you're going to put gloves on when you see him, and you're going to put a mask on when you see him, and you're not going to sleep with him, and you're not going to kiss him because you don't want to get COVID. And that is not selfish. That's stewardship. In the same way, when someone has an illness and you need to protect yourself from the ramifications of that illness, whether they're in treatment or not in treatment, if he was taking medication for COVID and all that, you still would wear a mask and gloves if you were going to bring him food, right? If you were going to take his temperature, you would, out of compassion, you might do that. But out of protection, you're still going to have boundaries. And out of love for you, he would respect those boundaries. When someone has a mental illness and is not taking care of themselves, or is taking care of themselves, but their mental illness is out of control with the medication, then you need to have boundaries to protect your children from the fallout of that.
Right. Yeah. Love it. So someone put in the chat, Leslie, we want to hear your tip for falling asleep.
Oh, so this is your tip. So you take 2 quick inhales, like a baby almost when they're crying, like that. 2 quick inhales and a long exhale. So, and just doing that, I'm like, I'm ready to fall asleep already. So it's a very quick sleep-inducing thing. So when I lay in bed, I do that, and I'm out after the second breath.
Now it is your bedtime.
Yeah, it's my bedtime, and I do it. I don't do it during the day. I just do it when I'm in bed, ready to go to sleep. I do that.
Right. I just recently heard something about, doing that 2 short breaths, and they were talking about another. They really weren't talking about sleep. They were talking about something else. And so I think that's something we're learning now about breathing.
Calming. It's a calming thing. So
that it actually resets it faster, the nervous system.
Yeah. So children, when they cry and they're starting to stop crying, they go,
yeah.
Right. And so that is the reset of the nervous system. So if you're uptight, you can do that too. And it will. And so God has given us our breath in ways to energize us. You can breathe certain ways to energize you. If you're feeling very lethargic, there's certain ways you can breathe to calm yourself down. And there's lots of YouTube videos on this, so you can look at that on YouTube. But it's an amazing tool that God has given us that most of the time we don't think anything about. But when we need it, it's right on our body at all times to calm us down.
Yeah. I think even as adults, we do it.
Yeah.
I was just kind of thinking, kind of children, we definitely can hear them. They're usually loud, but even as adults, if we're crying hard and we
Mhm.
begin to settle down, we like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, we have that sigh. It's like a breath
yeah,
and
yeah,
sigh and a breath and a sigh.
yeah,
And yeah, so
have
those
a
are the really
quick
calm,
chat.
it helps
Yeah.
the nervous system to
Yeah.
calm.
Yeah,
Mhm,
that's really wonderful.
mhm.
Okay, this is a great question, and maybe we get close to the end here. My husband is mostly emotionally absent in the relationship with our children and me. He's a good provider and connects with our kids on a surface level, but it is brief and not consistent. My 12-year-old daughter is angry about this and does not want a relationship with him. She avoids interactions, and my husband does not understand why she acts this way. Talking to him about emotional connection has not helped. How can I help my daughter through this? It hurts to see her hurting. And so I'm glad that you are, you know, it sounds a little like you were trying to help him as well. And I would really turn that over to him on some level. Like, why don't you stop and talk with your daughter about it and see what
Right.
she would tell you about it? But then, helping your daughter through this is a couple things. And I think this is really consistent with learning to accept, something that we really want that we may not get, right? We can't make her dad connect more, be emotionally more in tune, whatever. There's going to be a natural consequence to him because of that. There won't be emotional connection, and closeness. And, he may that may never be a big deal. He may really regret that as she ages. It doesn't seem to bother him now, in a really big way anyway, but also just kind of helping her really understand that people don't not everyone is going to fill your bucket emotionally. Can we accept what they can give? And if you have the choice or the option, maybe not parent child, there's a place where there's a little gray area, I think, around this. I think we still need to remain respectful to him, but there's a natural consequence. She's already kind of putting out the natural consequence of no connection, of not really getting to know her. She's saddened and grieved by it. My hope is that we say, my hope is that you don't get bitter and angry because of it. Rather, move into acceptance. We acknowledge it at first, and then we accept it. That
Mhm.
what I wish Daddy were closer to you as well. I mean, it's my heart's desire that you all would have a close relationship. Maybe you can speak to him as you get older, and maybe he might change it in the future, but for now, what would it look like to accept your dad as he is?
Mhm.
And maybe we talk about some of the good things he does, and he's not a perfect dad, and this may be something that's you're not going to get from your dad like you should or could.
I think this is really important both in the children department and the marriage department. Nobody has every card in the deck.
Mhm.
Nobody gives, I remember speaking at a marriage retreat with Gary Thomas, and, his wife Lisa was talking to me, and she said, oh, he just doesn't know how to fix a toilet. He can't do this. He can't do that. Now, he can have wonderfully spiritual, deep conversations. He can be very relationally warm, but maybe he's not too mechanical and can't
Right,
fix the toilet,
right,
so nobody brings everything to the table.
right.
And I think this is really important for you to say to your daughter, I think daddy shows you that he loves you and you're important to him. And daddy doesn't have some of those cards. He doesn't know how to connect emotionally. Instead of making it about her, what's wrong with me that daddy doesn't love me? It's not about her at all. It's about helping her understand that everybody has some limitations.
Mhm.
Just like I don't cook really good meals. I'm just not, I'm not Betty Crocker, or I don't, decorate the house really well. And sometimes that upsets daddy, or sometimes that upsets you that I don't like to play cards all night. All of us have flaws. My kids would say, Mom, how come you like, I don't like to do that. It's not my thing. And I
Mhm.
think sometimes our children, I remember my daughter and I laugh about it now. She wanted me to be the Betty Crocker mom who'd have cookies at home when she got home from school. I'm like, if I make cookies, I'm going to eat them, and I don't really want to eat them. And so I'm not making them. And plus I don't have time. I'm busy, and that's not me. And I think all of our kids have to come to terms. And that's part
Right,
of being healthy,
right,
and helping your daughter be healthy is to love the person that you're married to, or love your parent that the way that they are, not how you want them to be.
right,
And if dad is relatively a safe,
right.
loving dad, he may not be very in tune emotionally. He may not be very open and vulnerable that way, lovey dovey or whatever. But
Mhm.
maybe he's a good enough dad to say, hey, your dad really loves you. I know he does.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
Daddy's not good at that. He didn't grow up in a family that knew how to do that.
Right.
And so don't take it personally, honey. Your daddy does love you.
Right.
And I think we can speak for him, and we would want him to do that for us if our kid complained, how come mom doesn't, want to be the PTA, homeroom mom, and your dad says, well, your mom's working full time and it's really hard for her to have time to do that. You'd want him to defend you in some way. It's not about you. It's not about you and your character that she doesn't love you. And so I think to be able to do that in a healthy way, as long as he's not hurting her and harming her on purpose, you don't want to lie about that. But if he's just doesn't have certain cards in the deck, but he's showing in other ways that he's committed and loves her, then
Mhm.
and help her to see that.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I think also that she could help, help her see that some of the really good things that he does bring. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
maybe it's a really safe roof over her head, and
Mm-hmm.
a warm home, and
Mm-hmm.
that's part
Yeah.
of how he shows his care for her.
So,
Okay.
what if the unhealthy parent is stonewalling? And as we do this, it's 25 after, we have 5 more minutes. So, we'd like you to, what's your takeaway? What is it you're going to do in order to be a healthier parent? Your children need one healthy parent. So,
Mhm.
I want you to make a commitment. What are you going to do? If your marriage is lousy, that
Right.
may be, but your child still needs one healthy parent. What are you going to do to be that one healthy parent? As you're thinking about that, we're going to talk about what if the unhealthy parent's MO is stonewalling? They
Right.
refuse to speak about issues important to you, and the healthy parent wants to discuss that.
Yeah. I think we talked about this a little bit last night as well. Is that, I mean, as much as that we would love that, I can't make someone discuss something.
Right.
And so what does that mean for me if he won't discuss it? What will I do with that information? What will I do with that, with that hard place with my spouse if he doesn't want to discuss some things that really need to be discussed, right? If I can't make him do it, then what choices do I have? And really walk towards choices that I do have so that I'm empowered to, you know, deal with the fact it's not going to
Mm-hmm.
get discussed. And I think if it were me, there'd be times where I say, you know what, you weren't willing to discuss it. So I took, charge here.
Right.
And, if in the future you want to have a say and be a part of the discussion, I welcome you being a part of the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if you don't want to be a part of the discussion, then, and this has to be discussed or there's action required, I will take action.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really, in parenting to say, hey, we'd have to decide if we're sending our kids to a Christian school. We can't talk about it. You want to talk about it? All right, I'm going to decide. Right. I
Yeah.
think it's okay to not be passive
Right.
and do what's in your child's best interest. Are we going to vax them? Or are we not going to vax them? I don't want to talk about it. Well, okay, then we're not going to vax them, or we are going to, whatever you decide.
Right.
If they won't, you have to be the parent. You don't just default parenting because he's defaulting parenting.
Right. Right.
However, if he's stonewalling things in the marriage that you want to talk about, I want you to ask yourself, can you still be a good parent? Can you
Right.
still be a healthy parent?
Exactly.
And maybe he's still a pretty decent parent,
Mhm.
even though you have a lousy marriage.
Mhm.
I think this is really important because so often we get so hung up on, I need him to be the kind of man I want him to be in order for me to be okay, that I'm angry and depressed all the time because he's not being who I want him to be. But I just want to leave you with this challenge. It's not up to you to decide who he's supposed to be.
Right.
It's up to God to decide who he's supposed to be. And if he doesn't want to be that, who you want to be, and he doesn't want to be who God wants him to be, God isn't going to mess with him. So why are you messing with him? Like, you have a decision to make.
Right.
Can I love and live with him the way he is because that's who he wants to be? Or is that too toxic and unsafe for me? It's not about how do I get him to change to be the man I want him to be. Even God doesn't do that for us or with us. He doesn't make us change. And that's part of why we're unhealthy, because we're so angry at God that he's not answering our prayers to change him. But what if the real prayer is, God, give me the wisdom to know how I'm to learn to be okay, even if he never changes.
Right. Yeah. Serenity prayer to accept the things that I cannot change.
Yeah. So we'll be talking about that at the workshop. So if you haven't signed up yet, sign up. Elise, will you read some of the takeaways that people got while I talk about what we're doing tomorrow?
Yeah. Leslie, you're dropping truth bombshells right now. So let's see. I love that. No one has every card in the deck. That's so true. Her takeaway is healthy isn't perfect. It's being honest. Oh boy, it looks like I am The only one on the looks like Leslie dropped off here. Let's talk about some of the takeaways. Takeaway: take care of me, especially when they are not taking care of themselves. And love the COVID analogy. Thank you, Kathy. Adira says, takeaway: healthy isn't perfect. It's being honest with my shortcomings. I love the needing to potty analogy for being self-aware of my anger and needing to take care of myself in those moments. Yeah, I think the first couple of times I heard Leslie say, I'm like, is there a better analogy than the potty analogy? And now I use it all the time because it's a great analogy. We weren't born, we had to be trained, and there's probably people in, countries where they don't have to really, they just walk away somewhere and, take care of themselves. And so, and so really from the beginning, we've been, teaching our children to take care of ourselves, to steward ourselves well. And it starts with potty training and then emotional well-being. And so, yes, I love that analogy now is that I wish that we had been trained as small children, just like we told you how to potty train. Now we're teaching you how to take care of your emotions. And I love that one as well. So, and so we said this already. No one has every card in the deck, and let me, and they really don't. And I've heard Leslie, talk about this for a while, and it's really true. Kind of in my own relationship, I really have a great guy who has I have a lot of cards in the deck. But my dad was an auto mechanic, or he knew everything kind of under the hood of a car. He wasn't a mechanic, he's a salesperson. But, when I married my husband, that wasn't his gift. I mean, he had other giftings. And I was kind of, at first I was like, what? You don't have to, what? And I was just really confused. And I wanted that. And then I realized, wait a minute, I didn't get every card in the deck, and neither did my husband. And so I'm not the cook his mother was. And so how do we love and love well when we don't have every card in the deck? Being honest with your kids and not denying reality, but do it without disparaging your spouse, right? Yeah, good, Lynette. I'm glad you enjoyed that. Be vulnerable and own it. To my kids, get in the boat with them. Yeah. So, ladies, it's been a really beautiful night. So glad that you joined us. It was a small and intimate group. And my hope is that you will really, if you haven't signed up for the webinar already, that you will really consider signing up for that. It's so easy when someone's not okay for it to derail us as well. And this webinar is really going to be, how do we take care of ourselves when someone else isn't okay? Because that's our responsibility. And I sure hope you will join us. Thank you, ladies, and take care of yourself. Good night.